vegetable thing. Around and around we go. Where it stops, no one knows. Hard to take over the whole world. It lashes out at this trusted pearl. It could be your mom or dad, boyfriend, girlfriend, you'll be had. Invasion from our foreign foe. They'll survive with electric flow. That's the
Okay, this is Jimmy Jive, and you're listening to Motor City Rock Talk. Today, my guest is a lead vocalist from an early punk band that started out somewhere in the mid-'70s. Had a lot of success. They're still together today, out and playing the Detroit metro area. Like I said, in the '70s, they started out, I believe it was 1976, they put their first CD or record, probably a bit of a record at that time. Anyway, today, my guest, Mr. Gary Reichel. How you doing, Gary?
Good. How about you, Jimmy?
I'm doing great, man. Anyway, let's start with a little background. Tell me a little bit about basically where you're from, where you grew up, and what drew you to playing music, at a young age, or when did you get into it?
So, I am from Chicago.
Oh, okay.
And, when I was younger, my father was transferred around a lot. And so, I went from Chicago to Cleveland to Detroit, back to Chicago, back to Detroit area. I ended up spending my middle school and high school years here, in the Detroit area. So, yeah. And, I was always interested in, I was kind of turned on by the harder edge sounds of, especially the garage band period of 66 and 67. Sure. And really enjoyed that. 13th Floor Elevator Operators, the Seeds, the Stooges came around in 69, and that was very interesting. I was too young to go to most of the things that was going on there, but I did manage to catch them once. So that's me. Jim, our guitarist, he pretty much grew up in the Detroit area. I think spent most of his elementary school years and high school and things in the Detroit area, and I met him then. And we had been in a couple of different bands. They got together and fell apart,
Sure.
apart. And by the time mid-70s, well, really kind of like 74 or something like that was coming around, I was more dissatisfied with music and dissatisfied with what was being presented. And I was sort of turned on by accidentally discovering there were little pockets of bands. This is pre-punk, mind you, so there were little pockets of bands in different parts of the country that were issuing records themselves. And I was just really turned on to that idea. It was like, whoa, you mean you can issue your own records? Holy shit. That was really mind-blowing. A lot of these bands tended to be more of kind of like taking off from influenced by Beatles, 64, 65, like the Shoes,
Right.
out of Northern Illinois, and, so it was things like that, and there were other bands that you would kind of discover. Then there'd be like these weird bands, which were cool weird, like Per Ubu, out of Cleveland.
Okay.
And it was like, whoa, what's going on here? So that was really all pre-punk. The Ramones hit the scene, and it was kind of like, yeah. And then shortly afterward, we started hearing Sex Pistols, and that was like right up my alley.
Right.
Of the things that I was kind of really being turned on by before then, which essentially would be like the Stooges combined with the garage band. So we formed the band Cinecyde and issued our, we recorded it ourselves on TX-3340s, which were 4-track machines, and we bounced it down to an identical machine so that we could get 6 tracks out of it.
Mm-hmm.
We cut the record, we mixed the tapes and brought the tapes so that we could get a lacquer disc so that we could have 45s made.
Right.
And we went to what's known as Super Disc, but it was GM Studios, and I had no idea, but the guy was very nice, and he gave us a tour of the place, and it was like it was the studio that the MC5 had recorded back in the USA, their album their second album.
Cool.
And I was like, wow, it was very cool. So, they cut the lacquer disc, and we were just thrilled, and, you listen to that, and that sounds a little tinny. They arranged to send it off to a pressing plant, and we had, test pressings, and all that was fun, and we arranged to, make our own jackets, and we stuffed them ourselves and brought them to record stores and shipped a few out to some distributors, and we just started rolling from there. And our first record was, most bands wouldn't do this. Our first record was taking a shot at the industry. It was called Gutless Radio. As some would say, cheeky.
Yeah, I would say it was right for the time. What's interesting to me is what you said just a little while ago about, punk age coming in, and how a lot of people misconceive the fact that they think more or less punk, especially in the Detroit area, started with the Stooges and the MC5, which wasn't really overly accurate. They were like what you said, more garage band. The term punk itself wasn't even used until the mid-'70s, from what I understand. Right. So, you guys were definitely at the starting line of all that, especially in Detroit, right?
Yes. So we were surprised. We were what we were and had no idea if anything else was going on in the city or anything. There certainly weren't any clubs to play at. There were bars, but bars would have cover bands, and we weren't doing that. So one pleasant thing was after we went to Super Disc to GM Studio to cut this lacquer disc, which is what they make the molds and stampers from to press records. Mm-hmm. After our session was over, out in the hallway was another band waiting, and it was a band called the Zooks, Zooks. We kind of talked and exchanged some ideas and thoughts and exchanged phone numbers, and they were kind of, I don't know how we would describe them, so they fit under the umbrella of that whole thing that came to be called New Wave. Fit under that, but they were somewhat kind of maybe if you took a prog rock and made it just a little bit quirkier so it would fit under that. It's kind of how they were. But it was fun to be able to stumble across them and say, whoa, we're not really alone.
Mm-hmm, sure.
I would have been okay to be alone, but it was more fun. Okay, there was another band, and then then we discovered a few bands after that, and it was rip roaring. I think one, if you've ever heard of the Ramrods.
Yes, yeah, oh, absolutely.
So I consider the Ramrods legendary.
Mm-hmm.
It was amazing. So we had issued our record. In fact, I had records with me when I attended this party in Detroit near Belle Isle in the basement of an apartment. They were playing, some friends knew them and said, hey, let's go see these guys. And so we went there, and they played in the basement. It was really quite entertaining. I got to know Mark Norton, who was the lead vocalist, got to know Dave Hanna, who was the bass player, and Hanna plays to this day.
They were a three-piece, weren't they? A three-piece?
Three-piece with a lead vocalist.
Right.
Bob Mulrooney was the drummer, later known as Bootsy X.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that.
So,
okay.
Yeah, so he was their drummer, and Peter James was the guitarist. I never really got to know Peter very well, but I did have some long conversations with him, a number of them years later. Really quirky, eccentric individual, but he had a really great talent for playing and songwriting. And he later was the kind of guiding light for Nicky and the Corvettes.
Wow,
And
that
so
would have been quite a twist, because, I mean, that
It is.
wasn't really considered punk at the time at all, was it?
Well, it fit, again, kind of talking
More
about
new
that.
wave?
New wave
Yeah.
kind of was an umbrella that covered a huge sort of expanse of music.
Right,
It could
that's
be,
true.
like a Jonathan Richman type folky to the Dead Boys.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, that's a good comparison, all right.
Yeah, it's a big spectrum there. So anyway, they played, and I became friends with them, and then it was really, that was probably September '77, and then it was really like about April '78 that Bookies started. I mean, Bookies existed as a bar, but you had a couple of guys, Vince Bannon and Scott Campbell, approach the owner and say, "Hey, can we play these crazy bands on Thursday?" Which is a shitty day,
Right.
to do anything.
Yeah.
The guy said, "Yeah," and of course all these people showed up, and of course drinking age was 18, so that helped. Quickly, the owner quickly decided, "Boys, would you like to take over the whole weekends?"
There you
So
go.
they did, and it was it was a pretty rip roaring scene. So I don't know where we're going, and I'm not sure which question I'm answering, but I'm just going on and on.
No, I understand. And Bookies was pretty much, from what you say, the landmark club that started that. As a matter of fact, I had been there back in the day, because I was in high school in the 70s, and I didn't get to see the show, but I believe my buddy saw the Police there.
Yes,
That-
the
that
Police
they played
played there to an audience, a handful of people.
Yeah, and that
Handful
was
of- and
before
it's-
their first album, because he said they were just pushing a 45 at that
Yes,
time.
Roxanne.
Yeah, and that was
So-
he said it was incredible to see them that early in their career.
Yeah, it is. I mean, really, right after that, they just, really exploded on,
Yeah.
and became this huge name. But they were pushing Roxanne. So,
Yeah. So, other than Bookies, I mean, with Bookies starting it, after that, what were some of the other clubs that caught on to that? Because I know what you were talking about. It was a lot of clubs that bands were coming in there playing covers,
Yes,
four-set
right.
covers and all that. What were some of the first clubs after Bookies that started that transition? Was it like Tracks or?
Well, I will also mention that the Red Carpet in Detroit on Warren did have bands play there, and that was really through the efforts of a little organization called Sure Shot. And they were trying to, become kind of like a booking agency, a place to rehearse at. They were based in Warren. They were good guys, and I think a couple of those people were in a band called the Cadillac Kid.
Yeah.
And so, they would book, and so we played there a couple of times, and this is before Bookies. So I think we played there in January '78. Maybe it was February '78.
Right.
Somewhere there, and then a couple months after.
Yeah, you got to play there real early, because my band, we played there closer to the end, into the early 80s. So, yeah, I remember that club, not too far from Harpo's. I know that.
Right.
That was a cool club, though. It's a cool place.
Right. There's, so it was fun, but, it wasn't like a regular thing, and Sure Shot kind of did, maybe they'd say something different, but my impression was they kind of did one-offs with, one place or another. There were a couple other bars that they would book at on the east side, like on Gratiot and things, and, they would book some shows there and things, and, so, it was, it was good, but, really after that, you had, after once Bookies started rolling, you had, even though Lily's in Hamtramck existed already, one of Lily's sons was Art Lysak in the Motor City Mutants.
Right.
They started calling themselves the Mutants, so they were together. Yes, right, they got, kind of edgier and things like that, and then they kind of fell under that umbrella, and I don't know if it was just Art or one of his other brothers, said, hey, let's book bands here, and so they did, and so Lily's and Bookies was a great little, axis of, where to go, and Lily's was pretty fun.
Except for the way the stage was set up.
Well, in the beginning, in the first handful of years, it was a very, very tiny stage, and only later on did they make the stage go all the way across the front.
Right.
That had a removable section, so that during the week people would enter the front,
Yes.
and then they could get through the stage. But when on Fridays and Saturdays when they had bands, you would walk down the gangway to the kind of side rear entrance to enter that way, and then there was a stage. But I mean, yeah, I played on that stage when it was, just like a glorified postage stamp, kind of.
Exactly.
You kind of, you backed up a foot and you were into the drummer's cymbals.
Exactly.
Kind of got a legendary Detroit rock and roll story.
Please share.
Okay, it's about Lily's.
Okay, great.
So at the time, and this is pretty early on, so I don't know, maybe it's 79 or something, I don't know, somewhere right in there. There was this, for some strange reason, I never experienced, there was this kind of rivalry between bookies and Lily's. And some of my friends were hanging out at Lily's, and one of the other tables kind of called over them, "What are you bookies fags doing here?" So there were words back and forth, and one of my friends, you might know this fella, Jerry Vile. Okay, so Jerry did something he shouldn't have done. He went in the bathroom and he lit some paper towels on fire in the sink, just to create so naturally they were roasted out, didn't cause any damage. It was just smoke, and that's what he wanted to do. So they were roasted out, and they got to the front, and big Rick Metcalf, he's like 6'6", he's a merchant marine at the time.
Yeah.
He had smuggled his bottle of beer out with him. He took that beer bottle and he threw it through their front window.
Oh, no way.
And everybody scattered as fast as they could. Rick lived in Detroit, and a couple days later, a couple of Hamtramck cops knock on his door. Rick fessed up instantly. They didn't have to say why they would. He said, I did it. And this is so old school, I really appreciate it. Those detectives said, "You go make it right with Lily, and everything's cool.
Yeah,
but if you don't,
pay for it.
Right, we'll be back." So Rick went there, apologetic. He said, "Let me pay for the window and everything," and he did. And Lily was like, Lily was from Poland. She had a heavy accent, and she says, "You're a good boy. Come have drink." So they sat at the bar and they had a drinks, and everything was cool. Okay, so now I've given you the preface to the story.
Okay.
So along comes me talking to Art, saying, "Yeah, we'd like to play. Can we get a gig?" And he says, "Yeah, give you this weekend. A weekend coming up." It was a two-day stint. And he said, "Who's playing with you?" And I said, "The Boners." He says, "Okay, great." Well, the Boners was Jerry Vile's band, and Art either didn't realize it or didn't hear me right or whatever. So a couple weeks later, he calls me back and says, "Boners, that's Jerry Vile's band. They can't play here. I won't let Jerry Vile into the bar. He can't come here." So I'm like, "Oh, okay, all right." So I get on the phone with Jerry, and our minds just started. It was like clicking. They just started clicking, and we concocted this plot. So I called Art back, and I said, "Well, what if just the Boners show up without Jerry?" He's like, "Yeah, that's okay. Jerry can't come in the bar." "Okay, great, fine. Okay, cool." So the night of the gig, Jerry pulls up in a van really early, because he's got to get a spot right in front of Lily's. He parks in front of Lily's and he hides in the van. Then the band comes in, sets up the equipment. We run a microphone out to the van, run a video cable out to the van so that we can be videoed, and that he's got a monitor as well.
Right.
There's monitors inside and some lights. Keep in mind that this is pretty early on. Video equipment was, kind of hard to come by. And
sure.
So anyway, the band gets ready to play. On come these monitors, and it's black because I'm sitting in the van with them. I've got the camera and the lights. The band's tuning up, and when they're ready, turn the lights on. And we did one of those things where Jerry's completely in disguise. The one where like you just make a close-up of the mouth, and then you put two little eyes above his lip. So it just looks like it's like this large mouth just singing. And people were like, I fascinated. They were like, what? They couldn't figure out what was going on because Jerry's singing along with the band while they're playing. Yeah.
Was there a video monitor up then for them to see it? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Like,
yeah.
okay.
Two video monitors in the bar for them to see.
Oh, okay. So that had to be something totally bizarre anyway. Just that alone.
So, they end the song, I turn off the lights, it goes black. The next song comes on, Jerry's got a different disguise. And with each one, it's a different disguise, but with each subsequent song, it's a little bit less of a disguise. So by the time we get to the last song, he rips off the disguise and he's there singing. He said he fully expected the Hamtramck police to haul him away, but he said it was worth the risk. But people loved it. They were cheering and stuff, and it was a rip-roaring time. And there's my Detroit rock and roll story.
Well, he didn't come into the club. He didn't come inside, so...
Right. He was never in.
He was never in the club, so I can't say anything about that.
Outside. Treat.
That's genius, though. I mean, who would have thought to do that?
We kept kind of egging each other on about, well, maybe I could sing outside. I said, yeah, I could run a microphone out there, and yeah, but you're not going to be able to hear. I said, yeah, I'll run a monitor out there, and then it just kept expanding from there, and it was very funny, but it was fun. It was really cool to do, and let's steer it back to Cinecyde.
Okay. I was going to ask one last thing about that. Did Art eventually figure out what was going on? Did they figure out what happened at the end and get a laugh out of it or anything?
I don't know. I've certainly had conversations and dealings with him afterward, but he wasn't there that night. I don't know if he ever knew. I included him on, one of the things that I did, and you may or may not know, I put together a series of what were known as Tremor reviews. So Tremor Records, we did a whole slew of bands. I did a number of them and ended up issuing 6 different compilations documenting what was going on in Detroit. And certainly they weren't, the final word on what was going on. They was just like who I could work with.
I just interviewed Paula Besser from the Vertical Pillow. She was on at least one or two of those. Yeah, 2
of them. Yeah.
Yeah, she spoke fondly of it.
Oh, cool! And on with the Motor Dolls as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is a great story. I wonder how many people are going to remember that. Hopefully, some of them. Maybe they'll have been at that show. That's what's so classic about that. So, tell me a little bit more about the band as far as the evolution of it. The original member. I know you're an original member.
Right.
Who else is left?
Yeah, so it's Jim and I. So there were 4 people. So it's Jim and I. We had, Clay Albertson was in the band as our bass player, and he left a couple of years after the band started. So I think like 1980 he left. We're still in touch with him. He's a great guy, and he just had other things going on in his life that he couldn't, he had to kind of concentrate on. And good for him. That was good. Well, interestingly enough, we were able to get, we lose Clay, and it's kind of like, we need somebody. We had this guy fill in. It was a disaster. The gig was a disaster that we did, and I shouldn't say a disaster. It was okay, but it was just like, oh my God, he's just not getting it. So we were racking our brains, and I said, yeah, there was this guy in high school that knocked on my door and was saying how much he loved the 7-inch discs that we issued, and we had 4 of them at the time, and I was trying to remember the guy's, I knew his name was Chris, and I went down to the corner record store because I knew that he hung out there, and they said, oh yeah. I said, there's Chris Gerard. I said, well, will you ask him to come to my house? So he showed up. He was in high school, hadn't played bass, but we had a bass, we had an amp. He was willing to learn. He had a new guitar pretty well. We included him in the band. He was with us for many, many years, and he died in 2019. Chris Gerard was known. He would always do other projects besides being in Cinecyde, and he was in a band called Vocalist that had some really great songs, and he was then also in a band called Sleep. Again, they had an album and a 45 and some other things that they did. Really, really interesting, unusual band, having that wide umbrella, that wide spectrum of sound. I'm not sure where you would say they came from. It's hard to say, but he was beloved, and there's people that know him. They know him from music he did having nothing to do with Cinecyde, or they know him from Cinecyde and then discovering some of his other stuff. He did art, did all kinds of stuff, and the poor guy, he didn't make it. But we knew he had health problems. We didn't know, but we could tell toward the end he was having health problems, and I had suggested he take a hiatus from the band. He said okay, which surprised me. He took a hiatus from his other musical endeavor. That's when we got Skid in 2018, and we had done gigs with Skid years and years and years before. He's been on the scene since the Bookies days.
Yeah, I know.
And so we got him in. We kind of thought in our minds, well, maybe this is, Skid will be in for 6 months or something, and then Chris will come back. But Chris just got worse, and it just didn't make it. Yeah. So we continue with Skid, and it's interesting because Skid has he has a way of writing that's kind of interesting, and he is really good about collaborating with me, where he doesn't write words, so he will give me, or melody, so he'll give me his line that he's got and the formation, the structure of the song.
Right.
And then I'll take it from there. In some cases, I'll leave it exactly as it is, add a melody, add words, great. Or in some cases, I'll kind of go, Skid, I was like playing with this at home, and I kind of rearranged it. Is that okay? And he's like, oh yeah. So, it's like dramatically different, but I think we've had some good collaborations that we've done.
Do you play an instrument then? Do you play guitar also as far as writing?
Yes.
You do? Okay.
Yeah, so I do. I play guitar, and it's just I've never played, well, I shouldn't say never. Pretty rare that I've played guitar in the band.
Right.
And in rehearsal, I'll bring a guitar, and I'll show them, okay, this is how it goes. Nope, you're not, here's how it goes.
So you're pretty much the key writer as far as that.
Yeah.
Or does the band kind of jam stuff together or bring you ideas and you put them together? You're the glue.
Well, predominantly I'll write a song, present it to the band. They may like it, or they may be, and if they're like, maybe I'll rearrange it a little bit and soup it up, or maybe I'll just forget about it. But, I try to present things to them, and, Skid is another angle where he's, brought things, and I, sometimes it's just straight up, okay, I'll follow what he's written, and then I create melody and words. But, yeah, it's, so I will play guitar for him. And,
right, get the structure.
Yeah, here's how it goes.
Yeah. Now, as to where you guys play now, because you mentioned the club scene has totally changed. And has the band over the years, I'm figured you did because of the type of music you play. Did you ever play outside of the Detroit area, and specifically CBGB's in New York? Did you ever play there?
Nope.
No, I'm really surprised.
Yeah. Well, it becomes a situation of, okay, you're going to go play at this great place, but really you're going to end up pouring money into it because you're not going to get enough to get there, stay there, and come back.
Oh,
maybe somebody will put you up, but it kind of becomes old after, a little bit. And,
well, did you tour anywhere then, or play outside of Michigan?
No. We played, I think the furthest away we played was Port Huron.
All right, so you were outside the metro area and all that at least. Yeah. And how many albums does the band have throughout the history? How many albums did you put out? And how many of them actually came out on vinyl? Did any of them come out on vinyl, or were they just put together later?
Yes. Okay, interesting that you should ask this question, because our first album, like 81, called I Left My Heart in Detroit City, is a kind of for people that know that record, it kind of has a famous cover. Because it shows, do you know it at all?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, great. So that album was reissued back in the mid-90s by Hate Records in Italy. And then, so it was put out on CD and vinyl at the time, and now recently another Italian label called Radiation Records has just reissued it with its original cover. I just got those. Well, I just got one box a week ago today, and I got the second box today.
Now, are these CDs or vinyl or both? Or?
These are just vinyl, strictly LP vinyl. Yeah, and if you can see, if you look on eBay, for instance, there's a number of sellers, which kind of, is kind of cool, that are offering it for sale. So
how can you get it outside of like some seller on eBay? Are you guys going to sell at the stores or?
Well, since I just got them, we haven't arranged that yet, but we will put some up on eBay as well, so we can ship to wherever.
As long as you're doing. I'm just saying that you get you're getting money for it.
Yeah, for sure. And then we will there'll be some locally, though I think because some, like an indie U.S. distributor has some. I heard there was, I found out there's a store in Sterling Heights that has it sold some, a guy that I know bought one there, like last week, so yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so there you go. It's
Is that like a bootleg you're talking about? He would have gotten?
No. So these guys licensed the record from us.
Oh, okay, I see.
Radiation. So then what they did is, of course, they want to sell these records.
Oh,
so,
of course.
they in turn probably try to sell them to distributors in Europe, a couple, and then, try to see if they can get any interest in the U.S. from, and I'm not even sure what the distributors are, so, but they did, and apparently, this one store got them and sold them. But anyway, that was our first album. We had another vinyl album at the end of the 80s called Who Goes There. That's only vinyl. It's never been on CD or anything. So there's that. Then there was an import called Let's Talk. Again, that was put out by an Italian label. I'm not sure if they called themselves Hate or Helter Skelter at the time. I forgot. Helter Skelter Records or Hate Records. So there was that. Then we had Magnetic Traction, which is a CD. We had Like a UFO, which is a CD. Lesbo Vampires versus Al Qaeda, which is a CD.
Love that.
Then Vegetable or Thing, which came out a couple years ago, which is a CD. We're trying to, we had some 45s and stuff like that in between. We're trying to figure out what should we do now. We got a whole load of songs, recordings and things, and should we issue a 45 or should we go for an album or do we do a CD again?
How long has the band been together? How many years would you say? As far as maybe an anniversary edition, like a collection.
Right.
Vinyl, which would be cool.
Essentially since '76. Yeah, that's always like a thing that would be fun to do, some sort of anthology about the band. But if it was a vinyl, I mean, what are you going to get out of it? Like 12 songs, maybe 13. I don't know.
That's true, but it's still for the fans that are out there. A lot of them, they'll probably buy it and just put it in a frame and put it on the wall because that's a big thing now too, especially getting a hold of the first the original album with the original cover. I'm sure they're gonna be people that are gonna buy more than one copy. If I like a band and stuff, because I love vinyl, and they put something out on vinyl that's really something, I get 2 copies, one to play and one to keep, and I frame it. I love framing art.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they look good in frames.
Yeah. And it because it is art to me. It is a form of art, especially when the band puts some thought into what they wanted to do there. A lot of them don't do that anymore, but back in the day they did, because they stood for something, because the band stood for something, you had an idea and your songs were based around that kind of, whether it be anger, frustration, or whatever, it didn't matter, but that was the key to a good band to me, it came out live especially.
Part of the dilemma is, as a band, kind of band that keeps going and creating, I mean, that's an important part to me. I don't want to sound like some artist bullshit or something, but I mean, the reality is that, you make songs and create songs. I mean, if the well runs dry, the well runs dry. There's, 1,000 things out there you can do to have fun with. Okay, great. But, I find for me that, I can be putting nails into a 2x4 to put something together, and there's a song, all of a sudden it's coming out, with the rhythm of the hammer, it's coming out, and so you keep creating. And I kind of thought, it was pretty, we were pretty pleased with what we last released, which was Vegetable or Thing, and there's a pretty interesting video. It's a black and white video for Vegetable and Thing. It's on YouTube.
I saw that. It's really cool.
Yeah, so it's I worked with Chris Jordan and telling him some of my ideas and what I kind of thought about. I was looking for a noirish look to it, along with a 50s sci-fi thing, and he came up with some beautiful things, really funny things in some cases, to add to it. And so anyway, that was our record from a couple years ago, and subsequently we've got a bunch of stuff. I'd like to release something. We'll probably issue a 45 because I think we can get that done quickest. But believe me, it's crossed my mind many times that we could do some sort of anthology and put maybe a song or two that's interesting that nobody knows about or heard, and that make it worth it. But
you add like a bonus track or a live track or something, because that would help pick it up. And what's interesting me too, you saying 45, would you have ever thought, going through the years, from where you started and going how the music has changed and how everything is pretty much streaming now, and the vinyl scene has come back, that you'd ever be releasing anything on a 45, and the 45s are popular?
No.
It's amazing.
Hey, I'm with you. No, I wouldn't have thought that. We issued a 45 in like 89, and that's called Burn the Crack House Down.
Yeah.
So what? I like the idea. I like them. I did notice, obviously, there was a shift toward bands wanting to do that and wanting to issue it. There's a lot of inherent problems with it. Delay, for one. There's a much more of a time frame that you have to deal with to get them out, though there's certain ways you can speed things up, but it's hard to say. And then a lot of people don't realize that, audio purists will have this conversation about, vinyl sounds better. There's a lot of ins and outs to that. A lot. I agreed with it. It's nice when you think something and then somebody else echoes what you say. So a number of years ago, Poison Ivy from the Cramps kind of talked about vinyl and CDs. Well, that was back, that was like 20 years ago, and she was saying that she likes CDs because it was like sitting in the recording studio listening to the master tape. And I agree with her.
Sure.
Because when you make vinyl, you have got, your mastering guy, because he should be experienced at making vinyl. He has to boost, to give you the shorthand, he has to boost the highs, because during the plating, the mold stampers and plating process, those highs come off.
So you guys just played a gig this last weekend at the Old Miami. That's a club should have played at in the past. How is it playing at some of these older clubs? A lot of them are gone, Lily's and all that. I know Smalls is still around. We used to play Hamtramck, Bob Paychecks. But the Old Miami, that's still around. It's still kicking. Yeah. Is that one of your regular stomping grounds, or where else do you guys play? Yeah, so and just to mention that, and it's escaping me right now, damn it. Lily's was purchased. Lily passed away. Yes. The place was purchased, and they do have bands there, though it's been a while since we played there. And Paychecks became the Sanctuary, and we played there a couple of times. I don't really know. It seems that their scene is a little bit more metalish. Yeah. And so there's Smalls and there's Outer Limits, and Outer Limits is a lot of fun. Where else? Bolero. Right. That's a great place to play. So we have fun doing that. Trixie's and Hamtramck. I was skeptical, but they're like a bar in the middle of a neighborhood. It's like, what? That's old school. But yeah, it's Hamtramck, and it works. They were very nice. The last thing I'll talk to you about here, because we've went on for a while. What do you have or do you have anything as far as the future? Have you guys been working on any new material or just playing gigs? So like you said, the last album you did came out in 2021. That was 3 years ago. Have you guys just been real busy, or I know as we get older, life gets in the way. Yeah. Are you guys working on anything? That's kind of Cinecyde story. We've had a lot of life troubles. So after we issued our disc Vegetable Thing about a year after, Diane, our drummer, was diagnosed with cancer. And so she had to go through some pretty heavy-duty cancer treatments. She took a leave of absence from the band. We had a couple different drummers. E-Wolf was one, who's a great guy. Good drummer. Gary Poupard was another. And Diane rejoined the band this past July. And, so what are we doing? Well, we do. We've had several recording sessions, and we've got, I think, some pretty interesting and fun songs. We were at the Temper Mill on, like October 10th, I think that was. And we recorded 3 songs, and I'm really happy with what came out. So it's kind of, we'd like to use those. We've got some other things that were recorded over the past couple of years. We'd like to either bundle it together as an album or issue a 45. I'm kind of leaning toward, the quicker response, as in we need to have something out so that people can have something, look at it, hold on to it. And so probably a 45 would be the quickest. It'd be 2 songs, and then we can work on, the finishing the larger project. That's pretty cool. I guess the last thing I'll ask you about, thought that was going to be the last thing, but I thought of one of the, what kind of lyrics do you typically write lately? I know this is an election year. There's a lot of, every time there's a big election, there's a lot of this and a lot of that. Are your songs in any way politically motivated or socially motivated? Where do you get your ideas for your songs? So, I try to be open to a lot of things. There's things that will pop into your mind and go, I like that. Boy, that sounds good. And then you just kind of work on a song from there. So, it could be, something as offbeat as
I'm going to look, I'm going to touch, I'm going to feel, I'm going to squeeze. Okay, I made that into a song. That's something we just recorded. Okay, great. Then there's things like Vegetable or Thing, which, I mentioned is, kind of it's a science fiction thing for me, inspired by 15 science fiction films,
Right.
So what do I write about? I tend to feel isolated and alone. That's how I feel. Now, I'm not looking for pity. I'm not looking, oh, poor pitiful me, I'm just going to, no, I like, what do I relate to? I love film noir, the films of the 40s and 50s, kind of weary detective, just trying to go through, trying to make a buck and stumbles on something that is just going to be really bad if he keeps picking at it.
Yeah, The Big Sleep, Humphrey Bogart.
There's like a song now that we're doing live called Out of the Past. And it's, it's like just, a guy that's found some bad stuff that the district attorney of the city doesn't want him to have.
Right.
And so they're coming after him. And so that's, I can't say that there's one exact thing, but, when you ask me, I would say, well, I like a lot of film noir, so I feel isolated and alone. There's alienation. That's a classic punk, thing. But, it's a matter for me, the alienation or being alone is you make a strength of it so that you become self-reliant. And that's, to me, that was another thing about punk, is that there was we're not going to wait for the big label to say, hey, Sonny, let's make you a star.
Right.
No, you were just going to do it yourself. Do it yourself. DIY. That's what and that's about being self-reliant. So that's it. And for me, well, we can never predict the future,
right.
what is, but there's songs that happen, and to me, music is important. I like music, otherwise I wouldn't do it. And these themes are, I think, good for some people, universal themes. I don't mean universal for everybody, but themes that a number of people could relate to.
Sure.
Because these aren't just like, this isn't my diary. This isn't like I make the songs because they do something for me. I like it. That's cool. But at the same time, I want somebody to listen to it and go, yeah,
I can relate to that. Yeah, you can relate to it. Sure. Because it
Yes,
hits home a lot more. And a funny thing I was going to mention to you, too, and you may have thought of this yourself, as far as the noir thing, had you ever thought of doing a song like that and actually putting in some old school noir soundbite, like at the beginning of it or something like, hey, guys.
I haven't. That's a nice idea.
Hey, you guys, we're going to knock off this place this weekend,
Yes. Really, if you look into film criticism at all, I mean, it's some of the noir stuff is considered really fine stuff. Yeah, there was a lot of B films. But there's, that was part of the charm. But there's also some really great top of the line stuff. Film critics and filmmakers will go back to that time and time again and say, oh, they were inspired by it.
Yes, absolutely. It was a true art form because, like you say, as far as black and white and the way they had the camera angles and all that, that's what made it interesting. And there was real writing in those days. They had some great writers and some great books that they based it off.
It's a film called Murder My Sweet.
Oh, God.
And the guy, he does that deadpan narration kind of in various parts of it. And it's kind of like, you see him in the film, and then he says, I was hit from behind. A black pool opened up, and I dived in. It's like, yeah.
I mean, that's like perfect, man. That's Hollywood when Hollywood was still cool.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Well, Gary, I'm going to let you go. It's been really great talking, that.
Cool.
I will be, checking Facebook to see when you guys are playing next.
Yeah.
I'd like to come check you out, because like I say, I know I've seen you in the past, because I was out and about at a lot of those places, Lily's and these different clubs you mentioned, seen a bunch of bands, and you guys were on my radar from the start of doing this show, because I knew that your band was one of the first of that type from that time that really hit the ground running.
I'll say quickly to add in there, you asked about band members. I mentioned Clay Albertson leaving, Chris Gerard joining up. Roger Wesh was our drummer, and then he stayed until about 89. And we went through a whole series of drummers in the 90s. It was really disheartening and disappointing, some inertia, and then boom, you need a new drummer. So we went through a load of them, and then we got Diane Schroeder pretty much like in the year 2000. And so she's been with us for quite some time, and of course had her recent cancer trouble, but she seems to be very good.
All right. Thank you so much, sir. And you have a really good evening and good weekend.
All right, so long.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, that was Gary Reichel, lead singer from a legendary Detroit punk band. It started out mid-70s and has played for several years. They're still playing. Gone through, like he said, a bunch of changes with the drummers, and which so many bands have done, and put out several albums, starting with the first one that has, like he said, been reissued. And just can't say enough about it. They're still doing what they love. He's still doing what he loves. And I love the fact that he's got this interest in sci-fi and film noir, because there's a certain art to that, an art darkness to that lends itself, I think, to good music and to good writing. Whether it be punk rock, hard rock, it doesn't matter. It all falls under that coolness category in my mind. Anyway, with that said, as I like to say, keep rocking.
Vegetable